What's going on, everybody? As we can see, the stock market had a pretty crazy move today with the up and down price action that ended up playing out. Initially, from the FOMC meeting, we had a huge drop out of the SPY, but as the day progressed, and we'll just say as Meta and Microsoft came to save the day, the SPY is right back up to 638. So we're going to be going through the entire FOMC meeting today, what the Federal Reserve did. Of course, we'll be looking at Meta and Microsoft's earnings. Both stocks are popping in after hours and kind of saving the day. And of course, we'll talk about Trump and all of the good tariff news and updates there as well. So stick with us today. It's going to be a great video. So first things first, looking at the market today, I guess in the sequence or the order of events, firstly, the Federal Reserve left rates unchanged. Yes, you heard that right. There was like a 97% chance of a pause, and that is exactly what they did here, pausing interest rates. Now, pausing interest rates and keeping them steady in the 4.25 to 4.5% range for the fifth consecutive meeting is a bit, I would say, stagnant, right? It shows that the Federal Reserve is a bit worried. Now, they are still seeing a little elevated inflation in the short term, so that's a little bit worrying. You know, there's a lot of things that Jerome Powell said today that was a bit worrying, I would say, for the overall economy. And the real shift that started to happen in the middle of the day today, and in my opinion, the real reason why the SPY started falling off so much is that traders are now looking at a pause in September. Yes, you heard that right. Following what Jerome Powell said, we can see that the Fed Watch tool here and the market is now pricing in a 55% chance of keeping rates steady at that 4.25 to 4.5% range in September. That 55% number is pretty concerning. You know, this was over 60% chance of a pause before Jerome Powell started speaking today. I think that whenever Jerome Powell spoke, it started to definitely freak the market out because traders are very worried about rates being cut, you know, and they're also worried, obviously, that Jerome Powell is going to be pausing for longer, and that continues to be kind of how it's starting to play out. Now, traders are shifting. We can actually go to betting markets and see that on Kalshi, the chances of zero cuts this year jumped up to 25% today. That was a pretty big jump. We can see the chance of one cut and the chance of zero cuts jumping up, and the chance of two cuts actually falling down a little bit. So there's a pretty big difference and shift starting to happen, we would say, with the outlook for rate cuts, at least for what the market and what traders and prediction markets are pricing in. And that's also coming, you know, right at a time whenever the overall market generally does pull back. You know, August is historically not the best month for SPY, and obviously there's a lot of volatility that starts to happen within this August period, you know, especially looking back at this chart. I know that we've been looking at this quite a bit in the short term, and it shows volatility picking up. I guess I would say that there is a little bit of icing on the cake, though, because Meta earnings ended up being fantastic. They climbed up 10% today on revenue beats, and they raised their forecast, but they actually beat their EPS and revenue, which was awesome. And I would say they didn't just beat it. They actually crushed it. The EPS came in at 7.14 versus 5.92 expected. That is a huge beat right there on EPS, and revenue was a pretty big beat as well, coming in at 47.52 versus $44.8 billion. Capital expenditures are looking good. Sales were looking great. And as we start to look forward, Mark Zuckerberg said, in quotes, "We've had a strong quarter, both in terms of our business and community." He also said, "I'm excited to build personal super intelligence for everyone in the world." So sounds like he's pretty excited for the quarter, and so are Meta shareholders. Going over to Meta's chart, their stock is up a ton in after hours, all the way up to $770 from the closing price to the high of after hours. That was like an 11% jump. You know, looking at Meta in the short term, going to the daily, they had actually been dipping into this report, but this now puts them at new all all-time highs. That is fantastic to say. We can even go to an hourly chart just to confirm it there for you guys. But, with them running up to all-time highs, that brings a lot of optimism back into the market. And that's what's also helping fuel this SPY recovery back to the upside. Like in after hours, SPY started really ripping here and has had a great move on this overall recovery. Looks like the earnings are definitely helping things. And, kind of shifting away from Meta, getting into Microsoft a little bit, we can see MSFT had quite the run too. I know it says only 0.13% in the bottom right because they're not going off of the actual after hours move, but we can see that was like an 8% jump from the closing price to the high of after hours. So Microsoft is crushing it as well. They had some great Azure numbers here. We can see Azure tops $75 billion. Their EPS came in at 3.65 versus 3.37 expected. So I'm not going to say that it beat as good as Meta did, but nonetheless, still a pretty good beat. Revenue was a great beat though, 76.44 billion versus 73.81 billion expected. But, just to see these two stocks doing so well in after hours is great to see. It was also the first time that Microsoft disclosed the scale of their Azure business in dollars, so that was nice. And, with the revenue jumping, that was representing an 18% year-over-year jump. So pretty solid numbers there by Microsoft, and that's why they are running up in after hours as well, just helping to fuel the SPY. Now, Microsoft, as we can see, is well out to all-time highs, extending well above that recent high. You can see with the after hours mark there on the daily chart. If we go to the hourly, it will show it up a bit more. That high on a Microsoft is just under 560. I would think that if we were to continue a really good run over the next couple trading days, breaking 560 would probably be a pretty awesome and bullish thing to see. If we go over and shift to Meta, I know 770 was essentially the high of after hours. If they can break like 772, the official high, then I would go ahead and watch for a potential breakout there as well. With these two stocks, it's going to be a game of momentum. Can they keep the continuation going for multiple days? I think that they can, but nonetheless, it's definitely something to think about for sure. But whenever I'm thinking about earnings this week, it's not even over yet. We still have two other huge players coming out this week with Amazon and Apple tomorrow in after hours. So the rundown tomorrow is absolutely nuts. We can see that before open, CVS, Roblox, AbbVie, NCLH, CCJ, Cigna, MasterCard, all reporting there. But in after hours is where the fun really happens. Amazon and Apple will be crazy reports. Go ahead and watch those. Of course, today we're seeing Meta and Microsoft perform very well. Let's go check out Amazon and Apple really quickly because generally right now everything is trying to recover. Apple is actually down in the dumps a little bit in after hours, selling off slightly. Switching over to Amazon, they are following along more of with Meta and Microsoft here. So I guess that's good to see. I guess that is kind of negative though for Apple, to not be enjoying this overall tech rally here in after hours. But whenever I'm looking at the earnings though, this is just an insane lineup. I know that we've looked at this chart quite a few times, but to see that 38% of the S&P 500 is being represented here definitely shows some pretty insane shifts in potential price action. And talking about something that could also shift price action, we can't forget about the August 1st tariff deadline that is still set to go into effect this Friday. This is where a lot of countries from Liberation Day are going to see their tariffs jump if deals are not reached. And a lot of people have been looking at the India deal very closely. It looks like that is not going to come due to their ties with Russia. They are tied to Russia in multiple different ways, and Trump really went off on them on Truth Social today, so that was not good to see. It looks like they're going to be getting a 25% tariff. Hopefully, other deals with other countries can be reached. Bessent did say today not to panic. It was kind of funny. I love this quote down here. Kind of made me laugh. If there's not a deal by August 1st, I would encourage market participants, corporate America, even the countries not to panic because you can still do a deal, he said at remarks at a forum hosted by Breitbart. So I found that to be interesting nonetheless, to say not to panic, but at the same time, deals could still be done, so it sounds like the overall deadline is still in place. Obviously, like he said, they're going to have a lot of push to get some deals done because, of course, if their tariffs are jumping up to 50% from 10%, that would be pretty rough for some countries out there. So I found that quite interesting as well. But with that out of the way, it's time to shift into some SPY levels and analysis for tomorrow. So looking at some of these key SPY levels here, SPY had that great recovery in after hours today. SPY has really been ripping to the upside recently, and there was actually a good trend that I was watching on the SPY that started to give out recently. Now there's a few trends, obviously, but I really like this short-term one here where we had this bounce back on the 22nd of July and most recently bounced on Monday of this week before finally breaking down there. As far as resistance, I think there's a very clear resistance here right around 639 to 640. We can see 639 peaking out right there and 640 essentially being the all-time high from pre-market Monday morning, essentially right when pre-market opened actually. But nonetheless, the SPY had a wild move today. Everybody's like, okay, well, Tom, what's next for the SPY? I'm pretty optimistic heading into tomorrow considering how I would say just how quickly the SPY recovered, right? That was a lot of strength to be able to recover up following that FOMC mishap, we'll say. That was quite the recovery. If we're able to continue and really break that high of day from today around 638, I'm definitely going to be watching for more of a 639 push and probably even a 640 push as we go forward here. The SPY has been very resilient lately, and whenever you have two of the biggest stocks in the S&P reporting good earnings, well, this is exactly kind of what you see. So hopefully we continue with some good positive price action. If we do end up pulling back, there will be some areas to watch for. I think 634 and 635 would be two very close supports that I really like there. So that would be kind of an area to watch. If we really break below 634, then I'll become a lot more bearish. But again, we broke 634 today and even tested it on the way up, but ultimately those earnings really dictated a lot of the price action. And just don't forget that tomorrow there's also more earnings, so you could expect even more craziness. So be careful holding short-term plays through these events. I know things can get pretty crazy out there, but I figured that we would go ahead and look at the economic schedule as well because there's a lot going on that front. I know today and this week in general, there's already been a lot. Tomorrow, 1 hour before market open, we have the PCE price index, personal income, and personal spending data all coming out. Then on Friday, we have non-farm payrolls, the unemployment rate, and ISM manufacturing PMI. But there was one last thing that I really wanted to hit on today that I thought was a bit funny, and I just couldn't go without showing it today. I know that we've actually been talking about Josh Hawley and some bills here, but Josh Hawley and Democrats actually voted in an 8-7 vote to send this bill to actually ban congressional stock trading to the Senate floor. This is a pretty big deal here. Now, of course, can this pass? I don't know. That's going to be a tough decision, right? Let me know in the comments what you think. But Trump was actually out here blasting Nancy Pelosi for insider trading today. And Pelosi even put out a statement saying that she actually supports the Honest Act because it also applies to the president and vice president. So that's going to be funny. I guess, maybe we'll hear about Trump getting in trouble for something here soon. I don't know, right? There's a lot that goes on out there with these politicians and people of that nature buying up stocks. But I know a lot of people are interested in, congressional trading, insider trading, things of that nature. So I just couldn't go without talking about that today. But now it's time to get into our plays and setups for tomorrow. And with my first play, I'm actually looking at NVIDIA to the upside. Now, NVIDIA was on fire today. We saw a lot of stocks jumping up in after hours, of course, with Meta and Microsoft both having fantastic earnings reports. And as we're looking at NVIDIA, it broke above a key 180 level today. Now, $180 is huge. If we go to the Bookmap, there was 872,000 shares stacked up at that $180 mark. So to see a breakout like that is pretty insane. So I'm going to keep watching for NVIDIA to the upside, of course. That is quite the move here. And breaking 180 was a big deal. Now, as we go forward, if we can keep holding 180 into tomorrow, I would love to see the high of after hours break again around 180, 165. 145, and then maybe we can catch a good momentum trade tomorrow. Look at the way Nvidia traded up today. It was such a good move from open, and there was actually a pretty good pre-market resistance forming, and once that pre-market resistance broke on that opening move, it resulted in an awesome run. So maybe look for something like that tomorrow where, something could form in pre-market and you wait for a good break of that resistance. But nonetheless, shout out to Bookmap again for the X-ray vision. If you're interested, check out the links in the description down below. You guys can save, obviously, using those links. So check them out. There's some great deals there. I personally like the 3-month Global Plus deal. I think it's fantastic, especially if you're going to try it out for the very first time. And with my next play, I'm looking at DraftKings to the upside. DraftKings was on fire, up 4.9% today. Going to the daily chart, DraftKings has been consolidating here for a long time. I love today's candle. It's the first candle kind of on the breakout, and I'm looking for a much better continuation. There is some resistance very close to the high of day today, around 45.80 to 46. So if we can break that $46 mark, that's where I'm going to be looking for more of the momentum up. And over the next few trading days, I'm going to be watching for a $49 to $50 test. I love this resistance overhead. It's a big psychological level, and I would not be surprised if DraftKings continued on the pattern that it's on right now and broke out even more over the next couple weeks. So watch DraftKings. It seems like sports betting's doing pretty good right now. And now it's time to get into the momentum plays. And with the first one, I'm looking at Bloom Energy, ticker symbol BE, to the upside. BE was up quite a bit today. We can see even in after hours, it's having a pretty good move. If it can break its high of day right around 38.05, watch it to the upside. And with the next setup, watch Cleveland Cliffs, ticker symbol CLF, to the downside. We can see Cleveland Cliffs was down 3.4% today, but if it can break under $10.30, just under the low of the day, then watch that one down as well. And with the next setup, watch SMR also to the downside. SMR had a lot of wild price action today. If they can pull back under $49, then keep watching them down as well. There's a lot of resistance there overhead. And as always, whenever you're looking at momentum plays, big money trades, anything like that, always make smart, clear trading decisions. Make sure you keep stop losses. Do not do anything that will blow up your account. There's no holding and hoping in the stock market. As we know, people that do that generally get ran over. So make sure that you're trading smart, using stop losses, and doing things that will sustain your account for the long term. But with that out of the way, it's time for today's $831,000 big money trade. And today's trade is on ticker symbol FSLR. We can see that FSLR was down 1.48% today, and it has actually been turning over a little bit more in the short term as well. But looking at the chart, we can see that there has been some higher lows posting, or lower highs, excuse me. Whenever you see lower highs like this is a bit of a worrying sign. It's a bit bearish, especially even whenever we draw out the trend. The overall downtrend here looks kind of rough, and there is another rejection happening. Now, each time that FSLR has rejected around this entire range between like 185 to 200, which is a massive range of resistance, each rejection has resulted in a move down under 160. And right now, it's literally rejecting right where it did the last time it bounced down to that 160 mark. If we get to 160 again, that would put the 170 strike puts, obviously, in the money quite a bit, and they would probably start to pop off. Now, I will say this is a fairly risky trade. FSLR had been uptrending recently. Now, the past few days, it's starting to turn over, which could be a good bearish sign, but it does expire in just about 22 days pretty much, expiring on August 22nd. So be ready. It's a little bit of a high risk, high reward. FSLR is in the solar sector, which can have a lot of craziness as well. But we can't go anywhere without looking at today's member of the day. And today's member of the day is Sal1982. Thanks for the nice screenshots. So those are some solid profits there in the Discord. We can see that they did some MRVL calls up $300 today. Some HIMS calls up $3,400. So shout out to you, Sal. I always love seeing your profit screenshots in there, and such an amazing member of the Discord. And of course, if you guys want access to everything we have to offer in the Discord, whether it be the big money trades on the same day before they are posted on YouTube, or the SM bot, which is a nice screener, pulse tracker, high risk breakouts, which is called out by the Surge bot, and plenty of other day trades, check out the link in the description down below. Come join our great community of thousands of other traders. Other than that, I hope you guys all have a great rest of your night. I know this was a bit of a different video. Mike is on vacation right now, so be ready for that over the next couple of weeks. Other than that, have a great rest of your night.